Due to the graphic nature of this urban legend, listener discretion is advised. This episode includes descriptions of psychological horror. We advise extreme caution for children under 13. You walk through your wife's office to her cubicle. You had the day off, so you thought you'd surprise her for lunch. It's true what she says. You're just the best. You've been here before, so you know your way. Past the water cooler, first one on the left. You vaguely notice a few familiar faces staring at you from the staff kitchen. Usually you'd stop for some surface-level banter, but today you'd rather not. You just want to see the look on your wife's face when she sees you. But when you reach her cubicle, it's empty. Completely empty. The pictures of your wedding, your dog, her parents are nowhere to be seen. The walls are bare. Even her computer is gone. You wonder if she moved offices and didn't tell you. But she tells you everything. You realize that the office has gone silent. When you look up, dozens of faces are turned towards you, staring over their cubicles and out of their offices. And as soon as you look, they all turn away, as if caught in the act. You're uneasy, nauseous even. Something's wrong. You stop an intern as he tries to rush by. You've met him before. You and your wife chatted with him about the Red Sox at a company party once. You grab his arm, demanding to know where your wife is. You say her name once, then twice. The intern frowns before telling you he's never heard of her. Welcome to Haunted Places, a Spotify original from Parcast. I'm Greg Polson. Today's episode is a part of our Urban Legends series. Every Tuesday, we explore those chilling stories you hear secondhand, the kind that seem made up, but contain a kernel of truth. Urban Legends is only on Spotify, so keep listening here to never miss an episode. But don't forget to come back each Thursday for a classic episode of Haunted Places, covering yet another ghost-filled locale. You can find episodes of Haunted Places and all other originals from Parcast for free on Spotify. Today, we're exploring The Vanishing Relative, an old, unsettling story about questioning your very sanity. This urban legend not only explores the tragedy of suddenly losing a loved one, but it's also a cautionary tale that warns of the lengths others might go to conceal the truth about their disappearance. Or is it the truth? Did your relative actually vanish? Or is it this uncertainty that is the true nightmare? Up next, your mother isn't where you left her. The mother-daughter relationship is stereotyped as a dynamic that is as full of criticism and comparisons as it is love. And it's a relationship that's constantly evolving, from turbulent teenage years to the age when a daughter's biological clock begins ticking loudly in her mother's ear. Maybe the daughter wishes that her mother would just lay off and leave her alone. Or maybe she wishes her mother would just disappear, so she could catch her breath and figure out her own path. But what if the daughter's wish comes true? Rosemary closed her eyes against the cool fall air, letting the street band's music wash over her. C'était vraiment magnifique, she smiled. She'd only been here a week and already she was thinking in French. She'd taken classes for months and hoped this trip to Paris would be the immersive experience she needed for it to click. Her ex-husband had always thought her francophile dreams were silly. He'd been controlling that way. And now that she was free and clear of him, she could enjoy surrounding herself with everything Francais. A long, drawn-out sigh disrupted her thoughts. Her mother was scrolling through Google Maps on her cell phone, her cherry-red nails clacking against the screen. She complained that she wasn't feeling well and couldn't possibly walk the rest of the way. The Louvre was too far, she said, staring at the map. Rosemary rolled her eyes. Walking through Paris was part of the experience. and her mother had been complaining about it all morning. No, all week. But it wasn't just the walking. She complained about everything. About the cream-heavy food and tiny portions of meat, the language that seemed to lack any discernible words, and their small hotel room, and on and on and on. Everything Rosemary loved about Paris, her mother hated. The band stopped their set and the crowd clapped. Her mother loudly suggested they go back to the hotel and get room service. When Rosemary protested, her mother threw her a pleading look, coughed faintly, and said that she was sick. Rosemary glared at her mother. They only had a few more days left on this ill-fated mother-daughter trip, and Rosemary was not going to let her mother eat up the rest of her time by pretending to be sick. Rosemary told her to go back to the hotel and they could meet up later. Her mother pouted. She'd come here to be with her. Rosemary stifled a groan. Here comes the guilt trip. Her mother said she wasn't disappointed, but launched an attack about how Rosemary always abandoned her. Rosemary had abandoned her to live far away in California, and now she was abandoning her own sick mother for Paris. Rosemary gazed longingly down the Champs-Élysées. It was only a 30-minute walk along the Seine to the Louvre, and it'd be even nicer without her mother in her ear. But her mother's quivering lip stopped her. It wasn't worth the fight. Plus, maybe Rosemary could sneak out later after her mother went to sleep. By the time they got back to the hotel, her mother was moving slowly. She dabbed at her sweating brow with a hanky, trying not to smudge her makeup. Her mother had a performance to put on for the desk clerk, Arthur, a short, balding man with a warm smile. He looked up from reception as they entered. Her mother waved to him with a girlish flick of the hand, waiting with fluttering eyelashes for his greeting. Arthur received them enthusiastically, making the joke, as he always did, that the sisters had returned. Her mother giggled. And as soon as they were back in good old room 342, her mother flopped onto the bed. Rosemary waited by the door, certain that her mother would make her daily complaint about the room number. Her mother only felt comfortable in rooms that were all even numbers or all odd. The combination of even and odd numbers made her uneasy. Something about the aesthetic of it. She really was a peach sometimes, but there was no complaint today. Instead, she rolled onto her side with a tired sigh. Rosemary drew the room's plum-colored curtains shut, but the edge of the left curtain caught on its hook and tore. Rosemary groaned, certain her mother was going to make her call down to the front desk for new curtains. But it was quiet. Her mother lay in bed, eyes closed. The light through the curtains cast a purple pallor on her face. Rosemary considered with relish that purple was not her mom's color. The door suddenly swung open. A young maid with a bright apron covered with images of dancing pigs shouldered her way in, pulling a cart. But she profusely apologized when she saw Rosemary and her mother. Rosemary assured her it was fine. The maid tried to make a quick exit, but Rosemary's mother called out to her and asked about a doctor. She was feeling fluish. Rosemary rolled her eyes, about to tell the maid that it wasn't necessary, but the young girl was gone before she could stop her. A mere 10 minutes later, the hotel's doctor swept in. He examined her mother briefly before quickly prescribing rest. Nothing to worry about, he said. He told Rosemary she should go out and enjoy Paris, that he was sure her mother would be as good as new when she woke up tomorrow. Rosemary's eyes lit up. Her mother definitely wasn't dying, and it was still early. She'd have the whole evening to herself. She thought longingly of the Seine. A sunset walk along the river would be so magical, especially alone. The doctor must have sensed her excitement. Maybe even he could tell her mother could be difficult. He told her he knew of a quaint little bistro. It played live music all night. She could tell the owner Pierre sent her. Only a few hours later, Rosemary was sitting at a table in the corner of the bistro. The setting was parfait. Low light and a crooning band, just like Pierre had said. She checked her phone. It wasn't too late, only 10. She'd sent her mother an obligatory text an hour ago, but hadn't gotten a response. It was good news. Maybe she was already asleep. Although Rosemary realized she could be in the lobby bothering Arthur with coquettish critiques of the French. A tray with a fresh aperitif appeared before her, held by the smiling bar owner. Pierre's name had gone a long way here. She hadn't been without a drink all night. Rosemary accepted it willingly with a merci beaucoup and a wink. She smugly noticed the bar owner's eyes linger on her legs before he hustled off. This is what she'd imagined this trip to be like. A whiff of romance, good music, better drinks, surrounded by people who let the flow of the night take them wherever it may go. Her cheeks flushed with excitement. A few hours later, Rosemary slowly approached the hotel. She wasn't in a hurry. The prospect of her mother's sourpuss attitude made her drag her feet. She knew she'd get an earful about how she'd abandoned her again, so Rosemary planned to give her just a quick goodnight before turning in. A peace offering. That way they could get her mother's cold shoulder over with and start fresh tomorrow. She waved to Arthur as she walked through the lobby. Oddly, he said nothing to her, just offered a polite smile in return. Once on their floor, Rosemary pressed her ear against 342's door. It was quiet. She had the adjoining room to her mother's, 344, but had the key to both. Rosemary pushed the door open, flipped on the light, and stopped cold. The room was empty. The bed was made with crisp new sheets, and a look in the closet revealed her mother's neatly hung clothes and copious shopping bags were nowhere to be seen. In fact, there was no sign her mother had been there at all. Rosemary went downstairs to the front desk and waved down Arthur. She inquired in French about her mother's empty room. Then, with a conspiratorial eye roll, she asked if her mother had been bothering him about the room number thing again. Arthur's brow furrowed in confusion. He told Rosemary he wasn't sure who she was talking about. He was certain that Rosemary had arrived alone. Up next, Rosemary's mother-daughter Parisian getaway descends into madness. Hey Parcasters, have you entered the world of haunted places, ghost stories yet? Every Thursday on this Spotify original from Parcast, Alistair Murden summons a new spine-tingling tale of wraiths, phantoms, and chilling apparitions. Ghost Stories resurrects fictions from Japan, India, the UK, even ancient Rome. Created by the minds behind Sherlock Holmes, Dracula, and some of the greatest and most frightening literary creations ever devised. Don't miss stone-cold classics like The Kit Bag by Algernon Blackwood, a sinister account of a condemned murderer's final wish and the lengths he go to fulfill it. And The Miserere, a Spanish tale of a wandering musician who hears a terrifyingly beautiful song in a burned-out monastery and is doomed to capture its notes until he dies. Every episode is ghoulish, ghastly, and a ghostly good time. Be sure to follow Haunted Places Ghost Stories free on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Now back to the story. Rosemary couldn't believe what she was hearing. Did the hotel concierge really not remember her mother? How could he think that she'd arrived in Paris alone when her mother had been flirting with him all week? She stared at Arthur for a long time before stammering out the tried and true, "What?" Arthur repeated that he'd never seen her with anyone else and that she checked in par toi-même, by herself. Rosemary laughed. This guy was really a charmer. But his warm smile was nowhere to be seen. Maybe his English wasn't as sharp as she'd thought. She repeated that she was looking for her mother, ma mère. But once again, Arthur looked utterly confused. Rosemary turned to look at the lobby, wondering briefly if she was in the wrong hotel. But that was crazy. This man knew her. Maybe there was something wrong with him. A memory problem. She asked gently if there was another person working she could speak to. Rosemary melted in relief when the maid with the pig apron pushed a cart through the lobby. She asked about her mother and then nodded towards Arthur with a wink, as if to say, "This guy, am I right?" But the maid just stared at her blankly, before also saying she had thought Rosemary was staying there alone. Rosemary felt a headache coming on. She really shouldn't have had that last cocktail at the bistro. Because if this was some elaborate French joke, she really wasn't feeling it. But before she could ask yet again where her mother was, Arthur laid a sympathetic hand on her arm. He asked if she'd like to go lie down. Rosemary felt a surge of annoyance. Oh, so that's how it was. He was going to treat her like a hysterical woman. It was one thing her mother had gotten right after all. French people were a bit snooty. Rosemary watched the maid and Arthur exchange a glance. This was getting ridiculous. She suggested to Arthur that they should look at the hotel computer. There would be a record of her mother, room 342. She strode around to the other side of the desk, crossed her arms, and waited. She'd watch him do it and see his face crumple in embarrassment when he realized that she was right. And then he'd say an apologetic "Je suis désolé" and tell her where her mother was. Arthur reluctantly scrolled through the register, stopping on their check-in date. Rosemary pointed at her room number, which was labeled occupied. Her full name was neatly typed beside it. Her finger then went to the name listed beside room 342, her mouth poised to deliver a scathing admonishment. But the name on the register wasn't her mother's. It was a couple, and the computer said they'd checked out yesterday. The room was vacant. Rosemary stared at the screen, incredulous. It wasn't right. It couldn't be. She closed her eyes and took a few deep breaths. There was a rational explanation. Someone was just mistaken. Rosemary looked at Arthur and the maid. They were staring at her uneasily, waiting for a reaction. She curtly told them she'd like to see the room again, now. There'd be something in there to prove that her mother had been there just this afternoon. Rosemary showed them that her key still worked and stepped into 342 and threw open the closet. Arthur calmly watched from the doorway as she got on her knees to search every crack. But there were no clothes, no jewelry, nothing. She crawled under the bed, desperate for even a red nail polish flake that might prove she was right. But the room was cleaner than when they'd arrived. She paced around the space until finally she stopped in front of the window. And then she saw it. The rip in the curtain where she'd caught it on the hook hours earlier. Her laugh sounded sharp and abrasive as it burst from her chest. She yelled at Arthur, telling him to look at the rip. It was evidence that she'd been here. She'd ripped the curtain just a few hours earlier. But Arthur looked at her pityingly and said that the curtain had always been like that. He was embarrassed they'd had yet to repair it. Her chest tightened and her breath caught. She was about to have a panic attack. She knew the feeling. She'd had them often when she'd fight with her ex. The room suddenly felt like its walls were closing in. She had to get out, now. She stumbled towards the door, but Arthur wouldn't move. His figure filled the frame, and his face was half in shadow. She thought him warm before, but he seemed almost sinister now. And he was blocking her in. She backed away slowly. First, her mother had disappeared. Then she'd been lied to about it. And now she wasn't even allowed to leave? Something was very wrong. Très mal. She winced. French suddenly felt like acid searing through her mind. She grabbed her cell phone with shaking hands. Arthur's calm facade slipped just a moment when he inquired what she was doing. She was calling the police. While waiting, Rosemary sat on the bed with her arms crossed. When the two officers entered, Arthur stood by, uneasily. They each offered Rosemary a "Bonjour, madame" and a respectful nod. Rosemary told them everything, that the hotel had, hid her mother or something. She needed them to question the staff to get something done. One of the officers looked at her carefully and asked if she'd been drinking. Rosemary said yes, but she wasn't drunk. The officers shared a look. The other officer gently wondered if the combination of alcohol and lack of sleep was getting to her. She shook her head, insisting that wasn't it. One of the officers put a hand on her shoulder, telling her to please not get excited. His partner agreed that Rosemary must calm down. This, of course, only made tears spring to her eyes. They didn't believe her. Arthur muttered to them in French she couldn't translate, and they all looked at her tentatively, as if she was some sort of delicate patient. But the thought of the word patient made her sit up suddenly. The hotel doctor, Pierre. He had treated her mother. She was just about to ask to see him when Pierre waltzed in. He smiled, telling Rosemary it was nice to meet her. Rosemary gasped. She shook her head violently. No, this wasn't happening. Pierre gently asked her if she could say her name, and if she had anyone she could call to retrieve her. He was here to examine her. Rosemary yelled that she wanted her mother, but the more she protested, the more worried the faces that stared back at her became. Pierre muttered something in French to the officers before suggesting Rosemary come with him. He knew a place where she could lie down. Rosemary's stomach clenched. The reality of her predicament sank in. She was in a foreign country surrounded by men of authority, and the only person who knew where she was, her mother, was missing herself. Her eyes flickered to the door. Before she knew it, she was sprinting towards it. The nerves in her back were taut with terrified tension, and her muscles screamed as she ran down the hall. Arthur and Pierre and the police yelled behind her, but she had to get out of the hotel and to the American embassy. She needed to tell them what happened, that her mother had just vanished. But as she got to the elevator, she realized they might not believe her either. And then once again, she'd be facing a building full of people who were certain she was losing it. She hurled down the stairs and through the lobby, but stopped when she passed a doorway that said, "Office." She looked behind her. She could hear their approach. They were close. The exit was on the opposite end of the lobby. She wouldn't make it in time. So she twisted the handle to the office and flung herself inside. It was a small white room. Tarps hung from the walls, and in the center was a metal table with a plastic dome covering it. When she looked closer, Rosemary saw a tiny, pale hand poking out from under a white sheet. Its cherry-red lacquered nails stood out vibrantly against the white. Her mother. Rosemary covered her mouth in shock, her head reeling. She looked around the sterile environment and thought of her mother's complaints of feeling ill. And then she remembered her gaunt pallor. Her mother had been sick, Rosemary realized with a jolt. And patrons don't flock to a hotel where someone has died of illness. Bad for business. Rosemary tenderly touched her mother's hand through the plastic. All Rosemary had wanted was for her mother to leave her be. And now, all she wanted was her mother to sit up and give some unsolicited advice. Rosemary started to cry. Big, heavy sobs racked her body. She hardly noticed when the officers rushed in behind her and pulled her away. Pierre appeared with a needle and jammed it in her arm. Then, her world went instantly dark. Rosemary groggily opened her eyes, wincing against the glare of the fluorescent lights. She tried to sit up, but she was immediately thrust back. Rope restraints bound her hands and feet to her bed's rails. She looked around the bare room. Its door had a small peephole that looked into a dim hallway. A nurse wheeled her cart by the window, briefly glancing at Rosemary before continuing on. Rosemary struggled against the restraints. Her cries of confusion morphed into horrified shrieks. At the sound of her voice, a chorus of muffled wails answered her from the hallway. It was the occupants of the surrounding rooms, joining her screams like an anthem of the doomed. Rosemary had woken up in an asylum. One of the first reports of the tale of the vanishing mother was described in 1911 by the London Daily Mail, who claimed it was a true story. But when author Alexander Woollcott verified the story in 1932, he found that a Detroit journalist had published the earliest recorded version of the tale in 1889. According to Woollcott, the journalist couldn't remember if it was a story that he'd heard or if he'd made it up. True or not, the legend brings up some complicated questions about the power of authority figures. In the 1800s, men, especially those in the medical field, would commonly recommend medication or treatment for a woman behaving in a socially unacceptable manner. Depression, using abusive language, or being overly sexual were all potential symptoms of a woman's mental instability. According to a paper published by the University of Wisconsin, women faced many instances where their normal bodily functions, actions, or interests were considered abnormal or a symptom of insanity. Most iterations of the legend follow a mother and daughter on their way back from India who stop in Paris during the 1889 or 1900 exhibition. Sometimes they are traveling female companions rather than a mother and daughter. But most versions involve two women in a strange land, navigating a terrifying situation in a language that is not their own. This exacerbates the power dynamic they experience and furthers the confusion of the daughter when foreign authority figures tell her that she's gone mad. In some variations, the daughter returns to England alone before an investigation reveals that her mother had died of cholera and the hotel had covered it up so as not to hurt their business. But in the more horrific versions of the story, the daughter ends up committed to an asylum. Perhaps this is because the true horror of the tale is that our autonomy is more precarious than we think. So next time you plan that mother-daughter vacation, remember, there's no guarantee you'll make it home with your sanity intact. Thanks again for tuning into Haunted Places. We'll be back on Thursday with a new episode. And don't forget to come back on Tuesday for our Urban Legend series, available only on Spotify. You can find more episodes of Haunted Places and all other originals from Parcast for free on Spotify. Until next time, don't believe some of the things you hear. Believe all of them. Haunted Places is a Spotify original from Parcast. Executive producers include Max and Ron Cutler. Sound design by Russell Nash, with production assistance by Ron Shapiro, Carly Madden, and Aaron Larson. This episode of Haunted Places was written by Kate Murdoch, with writing assistance by Alex Garland. I'm Greg Polson.